Thank you. Well, I've not been introduced as boring before. I'll try not to live up to it. So, what I'm going to talk about now, I realise we're running a little late, so I will trot through as fast as I can. What we've been talking about so far is what we've done. This is more speculative, what we might do in the future. And the particular project that we're looking at is about rules as code, which is a shorthand term for this idea that draft legislation in the future could come already with some markup on it that helps a computer follow the logical structure. So we're standardly writing things that say, if X, then Y must not do Z, Y means A but not B, and so on. There's these PowerPoints will be made available afterwards, and there's sets of links for further explanations about what rules as code is. I've just copied that so you can see a set of links there. What it's not is quite important. It's not robo-judge. It's not robo-drafter either. The EU is actually looking at a robotic drafting assistant, an AI assistant, although it's not really AI. People call things AI because everyone calls things AI if it's to do with computers these days. One of these awful pop-up things, but it prompts you, it says, oh, you haven't put a comma at the end of that. There should be a comma there. What it's doing is only looking at the logical structure of a draft. It's not trying to capture the meaning of the plain English terms that we're using. So it's really looking at these things with the yellow highlighter on. It's not telling you what alcohol is. It's not telling you what fraud is or what an alcohol banning order is. It is picking up on commercial operator because that's got a definition. So but inside the definition, it's not telling you what a body corporate is, or business, or profit, or what a public house or a hotel is. But the point is, you can abstract that into its logical form. We have tried it out on the charities law. Obviously, that example I gave just now was fairly straightforward. The charities law, there are a whole set of different entities that could apply to be registered as a charity, all of which have different structures and different legislation governing them, and different, not trustees, but directors, depending on what the thing is. So this is a set of questions just taken out of the text of the law with a set of drop downs, yes, no, unknown. And using something as simple as Excel, it's simple to use, it's horrible to write. But if you enter, I think in this one, there's a yes there, all the rest are unknown, and there's a couple of yeses there. That generates all of these answers about whether the thing counts as an entity for the charities law, and whether it, what sort of rules that piece of legislation has about what counts as what for that kind of entity. In the Commonwealth, these days, our style of drafting is comparatively rigorous and disciplined, and is coming close to what computer people call a controlled natural language. And there is a professor who is making a computer programming language that is English, but it's English in a structured form. And his inspiration for that was the structure that we give to legislation. The effect of analysing what you're doing for its structure is useful in itself in teaching you more about what's going on behind the scenes. And we've been talking to other drafting offices about how that works, particularly in the UK, but also in Australia and globally through Calc. There are systems that already do this sort of thing, so the result, if you can do this, is, and I think it's quite interesting that this one is designed for policy, not legislation, but the way that they get policy officials to write policy is very much structured like legislation is structured, with that indenting pattern. But the result is that it will check, are there any inconsistencies in what you've just written? And it will produce you a yes or a no. And then the end of that is that it will produce something that will ask questions and will answer those questions according to that law. There are others that are more tailored for legislation. This one is from Australia, called DataLex. It takes the text of the law, it does a first run automatically at analysing it, and then you need to check that it's done it right. But it then produces sets of questions which you give the answers to. It can then, you put those facts in, it will then tell you its conclusions, but not just in terms of, yes, you do need to have a hairdressing certificate. It will say, yes, you need to have a hairdressing certificate because of section 3A, and it will have a link to section 3A. So in that sense, it will make the legislation easier to use for people. One of the things that people worried about when this was first talked about, I should say this was first talked about in 2018, and we got involved then, but we've had Brexit, COVID, the election, and the Ukraine invasion ever since. So we're only now really being able to get stuck into it properly. But one of the things people were talking about early on is, oh, are all legislative drafters going to have to become programmers? It's not the same skills, they're not going to pick that up. And a large part of the idea is to get something that's user-friendly. So once upon a time, accountants did all their adding up themselves. Then along came Excel spreadsheets, and accountants started being able to do things with spreadsheets, and people who weren't accountants started being able to do more than they used to be able to do. But accountancy didn't finish as a profession. Accountants use spreadsheets to do something more. So the idea is that drafters and other lawyers should be able to use a program. This one is based on a program for teaching children how to draft. That's what the tech people think of us lawyers. So it's based on jigsaws. You can't put the thing together in the wrong way, because like a jigsaw, only the right piece will fit in the right piece. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So what we're doing next is we're talking to the digital economy team, who have taken this on very enthusiastically. So far we've been talking internationally, but we want to do something in Jersey. We want to have an actual project here in Jersey. With the help of the digital economy team, we're going to make contact or renew contact with Digital Jersey to try to get the local tech industry involved. They like to do things, they have sprints and they have hackathons. They like to spend the whole weekend trying to produce a solution, a dummy solution. We're going to talk to the Financial Services Commission because they're already involved in what's known as RegTech, which is trying to make it easier for the firms that they regulate to report to them and to ensure that they're compliant. The Financial Services Commission and us have also been approached by this regulatory genome project, which is based in Cambridge University, which is analysing legislation across the world and regulatory material like JFSC produce, and trying to produce logical models of it. We'll also be talking to JLIB. We've floated the idea with JLIB before as our publishers, and we will be wanting to talk to the Institute of Law and to the Digital Jersey Academy, one of the interesting things that happens in some other places is to bring students, computer students and law students together. And what happens is they don't understand each other for quite a while, and eventually they start being able to see what each other is talking about. And we'll be looking at who else to get in touch with. The idea is to end up with something that drafters can use, where you go over your draft. So I've just done this with Word with coloured highlighting, but you go over your draft and you mark up, you highlight, oh, this is a person must not sell alcohol. Going back to the previous example, well, is it a must not, or a may? Those are our three tools. So which is that element? Who is it imposed on? Well, it's imposed on a person, which is our commonest target. And what is it that they must not, or may do? Well, that's selling alcohol. It's bread and butter, simple stuff for a drafter, but if you can do this, then a computer can understand that that's what you've done, and a computer can do a lot with that. The definition one, what is the term you've defined? Is it a means or an includes? Those are the only two ways we define things. And what is the definition that you've given? And down at the bottom here, a lot of the structures that we use are if-then structures. We don't use the then. But what is it? Is it if? Is it if and only if? What is it that happens if the conditions are met, and what are the conditions? So it's just, it would just be marking those up as you're drafting it. The idea then is that we would have a tool in-house that we can run and the policy officer can run, so that we can check, first of all, are there any inconsistencies? Have we told someone they have to do this, and somewhere else we've told a subgroup of that set that they mustn't do this? And it will also enable them to put examples through. If I have got this license, but I haven't got that license, and I do this kind of business on a Wednesday, am I going to be in trouble with this or not? Does that match the intention that this is supposed to be achieving? Then down the line, separately, other software companies will be able to use that as the raw material to build more sophisticated apps that people can use, either to understand the law, to explain it to themselves, to work out their own position under that piece of legislation, or potentially to automate some processes that need to follow a particular piece of legislation. As I say, we're going to publish the slides, but we are hoping to develop that this year, particularly over the election period, and we will put news about it on our Twitter feed and our LinkedIn. And that's the last of the talks.